Are we in a global economic crisis? Are we in a depression? Is there a labor shortage? Is there now an overflow of labor? All these different things, if you watch the news, are designed to make you pretty upset, pretty miserable, and pretty depressed, and that's exactly how they want it. But if you've been lucky enough to be living under a rock for the last couple of years, you might have missed all the important things that happened that ultimately led us to where we are today, which is that when COVID kicked off, money started being conjured out of thin air, a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people were able to start collecting unemployment. Now, the systems in place, because it was on such a large scale, were not actually working. So people were still collecting money fairly recently, maybe even still to this day. I'm not totally versed on that, but a lot of people were collecting money for doing absolutely nothing, all because they lost their job when COVID first started. Because everybody had high-paying jobs and the unemployment was actually pretty well paid, so to speak. What is a business owner supposed to do when you're competing with more money for not doing any work versus actually going to work and making less money? I don't want to say that most people are lazy. That's not necessarily the truth, but this is just basic math, right? If you can get paid more money for doing nothing or get paid less to go to work, then what are you gonna choose? Like, most people are obviously gonna say, I'm gonna stay at home, I'm gonna do nothing, and I'm gonna collect this paycheck for as long as I can before I go back to work. This is where a lot of business owners in the West have just been so screwed and so hammered for the last couple of years, and I can't tell you how many times I get on calls with people. The talent that is available out there, if you're a Western business owner, is just not very good. I mean, there's a guy at the pizza shop down the street from me. He said, we're at the point now, we can't even run a full background check. Like, one, we don't have the money, and two, we just need help so desperately. If somebody shows up and they've got their shoes tied, I'll basically hire them on the spot. That is how bad things have gotten. And that's not just fast food, that's not just delivery, that's not pizza places, that's not flipping burgers, it's everywhere. All the time I hear it now too, that people don't even show up to their interviews. It used to be if you had an interview set in stone, you had a very, very good chance of that person showing up. And when I talk to people, even in person, that's not the case these days. Like, I understand when you have like an online meeting to interview for a job and it's like a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever else, it's pretty easy to just ditch out on that. But it's a whole different situation in person, and yet people are doing that all the time. And what's more is I've even heard a few situations where people were hired for the job and then did not show up to their first day of work, which is just absolutely crazy to me. This is a very different world, a very different society that we are now kind of hiring in and playing the game of business in. Frankly, for most smaller business owners, it's really not an ideal game because, one, your time is valuable. You're not a big corporation that's got someone who handles all the scheduling, all the logistics, and if someone doesn't show up to their interview, it's just time lost. As a business owner, every hour of your time is very valuable. So someone who's not showing up to these interviews, it's really not a good situation for your overall time and of course the health of your business. And that doesn't even account for the fact that there's been some societal shifts in the last few years between just internet expansion, different generations kind of coming into the workforce, but overwhelmingly I hear that the work ethics of people is just not quite the same. And I don't want to sit here and I don't want to just rag on an entire generation. It's too broad of a brush to paint with. That being said, people had this very bloated expectation of what they could get out of college. At the time, I was able to quit my job and I got a job as an engineer doing high level support, and I was making, with overtime and bonuses, like 70 grand a year. But there were a lot of people that studied something very basic like sociology or human resources or whatever else it might be, and they were like, I'm gonna go make 85 grand straight out of school. And of course, their reality was shattered when they actually graduated and they got into the labor force. It's a very vast generational gap, I think, between millennials and kind of the generation that's graduating college now. For example, I didn't grow up with a cell phone. I did not grow up in an age of social media, whereas people who are graduating college now have never known a world without those things. They see the whole Instagram lifestyle. They see the social media, everybody bragging, everybody looks rich, everybody's trying to measure up. It's the newest keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. The reality is then they get out into the workforce and they have this inflated sense of worth to the point where it makes it very difficult for people to hire them for entry-level positions. And the result of all of this is that the whole market just shifts to where a small business owner like you can't actually get the help they need at a reasonable price. And I hear this repeatedly, is that I could hire somebody, but one, they're gonna be expensive, and two, they're not gonna be that good. So nobody wants to hire mid-level mediocre people. Sometimes businesses are about filling up numbers, but small business owners, that's not really what you're doing. You're trying to hire the A+ talent at a reasonable rate that can actually drive your business forward, because a lot of times, and you probably realize this, it's better to have one really good A+ person than it is to have 3 C level players. So that's where it's gotten so tough for business owners, is that middle ground in America, in Canada, in the UK, Australia, that mid-level that you could actually maybe afford is just not very good. And even then it's questionable if you can really afford them. Like, it's still just expensive. And a lot of people say, like, oh, they're not a native English speaker or whatever it might be. But the reality is somebody who is like top 5% from overseas is still gonna do a better job than someone who's like top 70% in the US. So that's where agencies like mine come in. We take the process off your hands and we say, hey, look, we know how hard it is to find good talent. We know how time intensive it is. And you know what? We can put one of those top 5, 10% people into your business in 5 days. You won't be spending any time other than the phone call to find out what you need. The job description will be written for you, and all the sourcing, screening, and scheduling will be done completely for you. So as a business owner, I understand you need to tune out all the noise. You can't sit here and watch the news and say, oh God, there's another crisis. There's an economic depression. You just can't live like that. You have to move forward. But if you don't have the right people around you, don't have the ability to get those people into your business and get the help you need, it's going to be hard to kind of drive your business forward and reach that level of success. So if you're looking to get somebody into your business at a fraction of the cost that it would usually take to hire in the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, or any other Western English-speaking country, book a call with the sales team at HireUA.com. We'll leave the link right below, and we will be sure to get on the phone with you. We will have a discussion about your needs, the hours, the pay, and from there we can decide if we're a good fit to work together. And if we are, like I said, we'll be getting people into your business within 5 days, as opposed to weeks and months to find, sort, and screen mediocre candidates.